Helen's a linked data technology specialist and librarian in the network development and MARC standards office at the Library of Congress. She supports the development of libraries' linked data service, id.loc.gov, and actively participates in ongoing development of the BibFrame standard to bring bibliographic description and data exchange into the linked data environment. Before joining the Library of Congress, she led the Digital Library Services Group at the U.S. Geological Survey, where she oversaw key initiatives in digitization, metadata infrastructure, and public access to research data and publications. She's passionate about applying emerging technologies to improve knowledge management, promote data interoperability, and support long-term access to cultural and scientific information. We also have joining us Nate. He is a linked data specialist, librarian, and application developer at the Library of Congress, where he's worked for almost 34 years. He has been active in library standards work for the past 25 years, working on the BibFrame, METS, MODS, Premise, and Alta Data standards, and various digital library implementations using those standards. He's worked on the library's linked data site, id.loc.gov, almost from the beginning. Recent work is focused primarily on maintaining the library's BibFrame database for catalogers, responding to cataloger search needs, and recommendations, and recommending updates to BibFrame ontology or ID datasets to facilitate bibliographic description in a linked data world. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you for the introduction. So today's presentation is going to talk about Library of Congress linked data service and what's new and what are the new developments in that service. And so we're going to talk, for people not familiar with id.loc.gov, which is the website for the linked data service. And I'm going to give a brief overview. And then we are going to talk about a few new developments in that service. Okay, so ID was, I think, created around 2009. And the main purpose for that service was to provide access to the library's controlled vocabularies, bib data in a linked data format. And so each resourcing ID has a unique URI. And we also support download of those data sets in various serialization formats, such as RDF XML, JSON, and NTriples. And we also enables linking to some other related concepts in other ontology or non-library Congress vocabularies. And also for the ID. And we have the ID was mainly created for machine-to-machine access to the data sets, but we also have a web portal that you can do a search and browse the data sets. And so one of the new development we have done recently is to create an API portal, because a lot of people access our data through our API, but we get feedbacks about how these APIs can be used. So we created a portal to provide a formal documentation about how to use these APIs. And this service is created using a standards called Open API standards and a Swagger. So these are the links to the new service we created and the standards we used. And this is a screenshot of the new API documentation portal. So from the ID website, if you look at the left navigation menu, there's a new API documentation beta link there. So once you click on that, you get onto the API portal. And we listed all the APIs, API documentations on the left menu too. So if you choose one, you see the documentation for that API. And so there are several sections in each API documentation. At the top, we provide a JSON format documentation that you can download. and maybe you can import into your application to use the API. And also, we also provided some detailed descriptions about this documentation, and sometimes they are not collapsed. So if you click on the arrow on the details, you'll see a description. And if you want to try the API through this portal, and you can click on one of the this path, that's what's called in Swagger API, in that little down arrow. And so you get to the section that you can try out this API. And so that's one of the services we developed. It's in beta. So we like everybody to give us feedback how we're doing on that service. And next, I think my colleague Nate is going to talk about other new developments.
Yeah, can I share?
So I will stop sharing.
Is that sharing the full screen yet?
It's showing the full, I can see the PowerPoint as well as your slides. And now I see presenter view.
Here we go. Is that better?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk about the changes that we've made in the actual data. There's control vocabulary changes and then some stuff behind the scenes and some changes to some of our APIs and services. The biggest one that we changed is by adding 639-3 language codes. There's about 8,000 of them. And so that's pretty cool. And if you go to the homepage at id.loc.gov, you'll see all of our languages listed there. And actually, all of those images in my part of the slide are clickable. So if you're following on the presentation that we uploaded, you can just go to those sites if you want. So we have a lot of the ISO language lists now. And if you look at the 639-3 list, it's broken out into things like living and extinct languages. So you can do some just browsing if you want. But the main purpose of putting the list in is so that our catalogers can pick it when they're doing their bibliographic description. And that's the picture you see at the bottom. That's our Marva Quartz using the list in a pick list. So if you start typing, it narrows down the things you want until you get to the language that you want. We've also put in 2 very small music lists that came from the Performed Music Ontology, PMO, and that's going to be important for people describing music resources using the PMO. And it's also important because we're going to be incorporating PMO into BibFrame in the fall, and so that's upcoming work. So these two lists will help with that. And of course, ongoing updates, we just updated the BibFrame ontology to version 2.6. And actually, every day, the data sets are growing bigger and changing because we get names every day, we get subjects every week, and then quarterly updates usually to most of the other lists on the site. Behind the scenes, we're doing some stuff with language scripts. In the name authority file, you don't have script and language tags, but we're going through and adding them programmatically. So we will look at a record and sniff the Unicode set and decide that this is a Cyrillic and this is a Hebrew language tag, and we'll put in the language as appropriate. This is important for our catalogers who are doing more work in vernacular scripts to be able to identify this stuff, and it will be pushed into MARC in the subfield 7 in bib records. And so there's a lot of work going on trying to fill in this gap where we've put in things in other languages but haven't identified the script. It's still not finished. It's ongoing work. So if you see problems, let us know and we will do what we can to fix it. Also behind the scenes in the spring, we really had a lot of activity that was causing downtime and, well, I mean, like timeouts, not downtime of the site itself. And so some searches were failing. And so we made a concerted effort to look at our database and clean out stuff that had been sort of experimental or never used. And so we cleaned up the database as much as we could. And then we also changed our formatting so that when you look at a record, it does not look up all the labels that came from Mark, the strings that came from Mark at that time. It does that up front. So as we load a record, we do search everything that's related to this thing and bring back and store the URIs. So our stored record is much more triples, like the resource, the relationship, and then the URI. And that way, at display time, all we have to do is resolve the object URI. And so for Bill Clinton, all of these things are very compact, and this is how we store it. And then when we display it, we go out and we expand it into the text and other related items for this. And so this has made our display much more efficient. And most of these labels are cached, so there isn't really that much searching at all. A lot of our work is done up front as we load the records. All right, so some of the service changes. Our suggest to service is the type ahead, so that as you're if you use this URL, as you're typing, it resolves further and further down to the thing you're looking for. And you can get it back as JSON or XML or whatever you want. And the documentation for that is in the Swagger documents that Chi was talking about. But I've added 2 new parameters that still need to be put into that documentation. One is usage equals true. If you put that in, it takes a little bit longer because it's going to say for a particular name, how many things did that person contribute to, or how many resources was he or she a subject of. So you can turn that on and off if you want. And then for real speed, if you say raw list equals true, you'll just get back the index terms. So if you're really just wanting to know what we have in a particular vocabulary, raw list equals true is your friend. And then we've added more and more fields to the payload of this record. So when you get a response, it pulls out a whole bunch of stuff, and we put it all under more so that it wouldn't break the top level for backward compatibility. And the reason we do this suggest service is so that in Marva and other editors, you can decide how what we have and how you're going to catalog something. So this is a subject builder screenshot, and the person has typed in grave, and it searches first for simple single term subjects, and then it searches the LC-NAF for names, and then it goes back and searches more complex subjects with multiple terms. And the catalogers have said that this is the most efficient way they want to search. So when you start typing, it does these 3 searches and maybe more in some cases, and pulls back as much information as I was saying before to build the panel you see on the right. So it only goes for each search, it goes to ID one time for that search. It doesn't have to keep going back as you float over, but as you float over, it will reveal the things that it found in the first search. So we found that to be very efficient. And then for regular searching, we really have not put a lot of effort into people searching the site, but we did add facets a long time ago. And we're primarily trying to get the data out as opposed to having people browse what we have. So, but we did add alpha sorting for resources under or result sets under 200. Because if you return 10,000 and had to sort through those, it would be way too resource intensive. So once you narrow your search down, it will let you sort them by alphabetic. And we've also seen people doing screen scraping of the HTML on the search results. So we made sure that you can now get back the results as XML or JavaScript or JSON using either content negotiation or just right in the browser, say format equals Atom XML, Atom JSON, etc. And you can try these searches out too. And then the documentation is on the left panel at id.loc.gov, the suggest service and general searching. And that's it.
Thank you so much for those wonderful updates. It looks like right now we have one question in the chat, and if others have questions, please do feel free to put them in the chat or Slack. We have a question to ask whether id.loc will consider putting up Sparkle endpoints in the future.
Well, I don't think so. We haven't thought about that for a while. It's an interesting idea, but I guess we've been mostly concerned about getting, for the past year, getting into Folio. And so we've not thought about anything except for supporting that push. Sparkle endpoint is really for people who know what they're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can easily mess up and spend a lot of time and be frustrated. So I think we would want to do a very targeted way of launching something like that. And so it would take a lot of thought.
That's fair. We had two comment and a question. So it looks like the RDF XML serialization of ISO 6393 only includes the top level scheme members. Will an RDF XML version be made available that include all the languages?
Yeah, I think so. We have the ability to export a vocabulary, and I think the same question has come up about RBMS, but it requires us to program the export, and so that's something that's on our list to do. Currently, it's just when you go to the scheme page, it is just that top level set to drive the presentation. So that, yeah, it would be different, but on the list.
Right, and then one kind of more of a commenty question. I wonder why MARC authorities that have URIs in them already are not hot linked at id.loc. For example, the occupation from Wikidata, the authority record has the subfield 1 with the Wikidata URI, but in id.loc, all you see is Wikidata evolutionary biologist.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at that. It might be a bug.
Good catch then. And we still have a few more minutes for questions if anyone had something to ask. Are there plans to publish vocabularies in MARC documentation, e.g. Leader 6, as linked data? You're muted now.
I think that's probably more a question for Jody. Leader 6.
Oh, and it looks like UW Libraries has published them. So
Okay.
there's some options. thank you both so much for presenting. I know with the migration, you are both very busy. So we really appreciate you taking time to update us on what's coming from the
Absolutely.
library service.
Thank you.
Thank you.